Welcome to Geek on Film with your hosts, Robbie Holmes and John Hosch. Welcome to episode 21 of Geek on Film. I'm Robbie.
And I am John. Welcome to episode 21.
And we are going to be discussing a lot of things today, especially returning to Pandora.
Yes, we are. Happy holidays, everybody. Hope you're having a good holiday season as we're coming close to Christmas, and happy Hanukkah for those who celebrate that, and all the other holidays of this time. Happy solstice and all.
Welcome aboard. We're really glad to have you. I think we're going to jump into television. I will start us off this week. I watched 2 more episodes on Wednesday. I feel like we're slow rolling this show. I'm super enthusiastic about it. Really, really love it. So I don't want it to end is the way I feel at the moment. So I feel like every time I get on here, it's like, yep, I watched 1 episode or I watched 2 episodes because I'm doing my best to like parcel it out because I don't want it to end. I'm enjoying it so much. I finally got to the episode where the thing that has taken over Instagram Reels and TikTok, which is Wednesday's dance sequence, has happened, and then this next episode is the family visit. So some really meatier episodes of the show, but nothing to really. It's not really even worth discussing. If you are watching the show, you know where I'm at. If you're not watching the show, you should be watching the show. It is fantastic. I think every actor who plays every smaller role is doing a really good job. Even the teenage kids, the kid playing Jack, so the kid, like they're all just really charming. And the more I watch it, the more I'm enthralled with the casting. I think that's the aspect of the show that I think is really working super well.
Has Fred Armisen made an appearance yet? I don't remember what episode.
Not yet. It's got to be the next episode. I feel like we're getting to that point.
Nice. Yeah, it's a really fun season, and I feel like, have they announced a season 2 yet? I don't think so.
I think there's news, like rumors that it's going to be announced in January, that they expect to announce it in January.
Cool. I'm sure there's lots of renegotiations with contracts.
Yes.
Since it's such a smash hit. On my end, something also kind of strange and unusual, a little more so than the Addams Family. I checked out the Creepshow Holiday Special: Shapeshifters Anonymous. So Creepshow is a old pulp comic book, much like Tales from the Crypt. Got a syndicated television show, or a premium format television show. Tales from the Crypt, it was on HBO back in the day, and Creepshow is now available exclusively on Shudder. They're doing a television series. I think they're in their 3rd season. So these are, like scary, spooky, gory, horrific, like anthology. It's an anthology series, so every episode is different. The new series is spearheaded by Greg Nicotero, who, if you don't know who Greg Nicotero is, if you enjoyed the first bunch of seasons of Walking Dead, he is the man who is responsible for all the zombie effects, and he is responsible for what the walkers look like in The Walking Dead, as he is a horror makeup and prosthetic wizard and genius. So he spearheaded this series, which you all should check out. But the holiday special was really enjoyable. It came out originally out in 2020, and it's directed by Greg Nicotero. And this one is great. It's what is his name? His name is Adam Pally, who I'm sure you have recognized this actor. Off the top of my head, if you saw Iron Man 3, he was the guy in the news van that like loved Tony Stark and like tried to emulate Tony Stark. He's also been on some television shows and such, but he plays a guy named Robert Weston who thinks he's a werewolf. So he stumbles across a Shapeshifters Anonymous support group, and it happens on Christmas, and it involves him possibly being a werewolf. Anna Camp, the lovely Anna Camp, who you might remember from Pitch Perfect. She is also part of the support group. I think she believes that she is a were-cheetah. There's a gentleman who thinks he's a were-turtle. There's a were-boar or a were-pig. And it's very interesting to see how this being the holiday special, seeing how Santa Claus kind of comes into play with this. It's very much like, everything is practical, that was the really exciting thing. So this is all practical makeup, practical effects as far as werewolves transformations and things like that. So yeah, it's like a really fun pulpy thing to check out. This year was like the year for me of like holiday horror movies. I was really enjoying just like watching those kinds of movies along with like the Hallmark Channel ones. So it was a full spectrum of holiday cheer in the Hosh household.
Nice. That's it for TV this week. We had a quieter week, but don't worry, we both watched a ton of movies. I'm going to start us off. So I finally watched The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is the sort of Nicolas Cage movie where he plays Nick Cage, a fictitious version of Nicolas Cage. And in this world, he is at the point where he needs money. He's in trouble. He's not getting the roles he wants, and he gets an offer to go to a birthday party of a rich person in Medellin, Spain. And it turns out that is Javi Gutierrez, who's played by Pedro Pascal. When he lands, you get
Mr.
all kinds of
Mandalorian.
madness ensues. The CIA is tracking and believes that Javi is basically a leading the underground in Spain, and he's a terrorist and all kinds of stuff going on. The movie is really fun. It's super meta. It's super silly. I think in the end, I really wish they had spent more time on the Nick Cage, Javi buddy romance movie because those
Mhm.
scenes are so much fun. There's a great sequence in this movie where they are going to basically, without spoiling the entire movie, Javi would like to make a movie, has written a script. They throw out the script, but they decide they're going to work together because the script is good. And they're going to go and get inspired. So Javi has a jar of LSD with an eyedropper. And Javi's like, do we need to open our mind and go to the cliffs? And he's like, yeah. So like drops of LSD. They get super paranoid. They have a really silly moment where they're trying to jump over a wall to get away from people who are not chasing them. And literally Nick Cage is just like, you're too heavy. And Javi just goes, I have a very large head. And he's like, you have to go without me. You must keep going, Nick Cage. And he then goes over the wall, says like goodbye to him, and 10 seconds later, Javi comes around the edge of the wall, and he's like, it could have come around here the whole time. It's that type of movie. It's so silly, and their interactions are so funny. At one point, Nick Cage comments on Javi's shoes, and he's like, "I really like your shoes," and he's like, "Are those no shoes?" He's like, "No." He's like, I've never seen you in them. And he's like, I've had them a long time. I just don't wear them very often. And he's like, they look really good on you. And Nick Cage is wearing like Vans. And he's like, no,
Mhm.
your shoes are very much they're you. And he's like, do you want to try on my shoes? And so they swap shoes. And then he's just like, do you want to trade? And they're like little kids in human bodies, in like adult human bodies. It's so silly and so ridiculous. And it's fun. It's super fun. I wish I had gotten the opportunity. So many people who I feel like critics who talked about this film were at some of those initial premieres where Nicolas Cage was in the audience, and
Mhm.
they were just like, I have to go watch the movie again because I spent the entire movie staring at Nicolas Cage trying to figure out how he was reacting to people reacting to his life.
Mhm.
Um, it's a blast. If you haven't seen it, you should see it. You love Nick Cage movies, and I feel like you would get a huge kick out of most of it.
Yeah, it's definitely it was always on my radar. I just like slipped through my fingers. But is it just recently released on streaming and 4K, or has it been around for a while?
It came out this year in 2022. I think it was at
In the
early film
theaters.
festivals.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the
That
beginning
I
of the year,
remember.
and then it was
But
in the theater at the beginning, like before June, I think. And it just landed on Stars in like the last 2 or 3 weeks, which is why I finally decided to watch it.
So it's taken a while for it to get to like home viewing opportunities, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
it's taken
streaming
sort of a
theaters.
more traditional path is what it feels like to me.
Hmm.
Like this is the older school. Like it's not 90 days from it lands in a theater to your house.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one that I'm really glad. Like it feels very well paced out for me to watch it at this point because there was a
Hmm.
big hype cycle about it. There's a lot of people. We're kind of in the Nick Cage essence, right, with like Pig and things like that, and Mandy really kicking it off.
Hmm.
So what's interesting about the movie is you do spend some time and you think about all the things that he's been a part of, right? Like Nick
Sure.
Cage, shot out of a cannon at the beginning of his career and then had like a fallow period where a bunch of movies were not great, but he worked. There was one year I just listened to the Big Picture where they were creating like the Hall of Fame for Nick Cage, and I think he's got like 37 films. But there's one year where he's got 5 films, and they were like, I've never seen any one of these 5 films. Like, that's insane. These are film critics. Like,
Mm.
that you can put out 5 films in one year and still be Nick Cage. Like the year after that was like Con Air, Face Off. Like it's unbelievable his throughput. But I think the thing they talked about on the Big Picture was that he almost treats he's almost like a character actor. He's a leading man who treats his career like a character actor. Like it's he's clocking in and clocking out. Like he needs to be working all the time, and that's
Mm.
what drives him. And it's amazing when you start to think about how many films he was in and how many of them have been like Oscar worthy performances, how many have been like memeable performances, how many are just completely lost if you don't have a Redbox account. Like, it's unbelievable the variance in his career.
Well, his Wicker Man is insane.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
if
there's
you
great
if you
the
haven't seen that
movie
yet, yeah.
the movie's full of memes and like him making one-liners. And
Mhm.
and at one point he literally just says like bees, like, and
That
so
makes
like
sense.
they're
Yeah.
giving you all of the like little nods. It's silly. I'm gonna jump over to Pelosi in the House, a completely less silly movie. It is a documentary about Nancy Pelosi and her time in the House, and her daughter is the director, Alexandra. And she has been basically in the movie. She even says, like, I've been 2 steps behind you with a camera my entire life, trying to document everything that's going on. So you get a little chance to see Nancy Pelosi in a different light, in my opinion. You get to see her sort of as a mother and as a grandmother, but also you get a chance to see her a little bit more as a human, right? Like you get to see her go back to her offices and be honest. Like, we all saw her like clapping at Trump during the State of the Union and ripping up but like you get back to the room and they were just like, "What's going on?" She's like, and she describes it. She's like, "There's not a single line on any one of those pages that isn't a lie." Like, and
Mhm.
she's so just disgusted with the fact that like why would a president do this, right? Like, so it's not about being in front of the cameras, right? Like it's not about her making a point. You get to see the woman behind this and how she became Nancy Pelosi, right? Like, and I think that's the best part of documentaries is getting a chance to see the why a person is the way they are and what drives them to be that person. But getting to
Mhm.
see like Nancy Pelosi the grandmother like dancing with her grandsons and getting a chance to see like her and her husband and the way they interact and their the interactions with her daughter, and but also all of it has such huge context, like the behind the scenes time of like when they were trying to pass the ACA and how there were like protesters outside the house every night, and like her grandson is looking out the window like, Mimi, why are people like dead in front of the house because they were doing a die-in in front of her. So like you
Yep.
don't think about all the impacts that like politics has on your family, and it's cool to get a perspective on it that I think is very unique. So the movie really covers a little bit of her history and then spends a lot of time around the ACA. And then again, it spends a lot of time around January 6th. I
Mhm.
almost wish she had held this one more year so that we could have gotten Nancy stepping down and saying she's not going to run to be the Speaker of the House again, because that was really important. But we got a little bit of it at the end, like a little nod. But I think it's a pretty good documentary. I don't think it's my favorite documentary of the year, but it was quality.
Cool. That's cool. And
Yeah.
it's on HBO Max, right?
It is, yeah. But now we have to get into by Crumb. We need to get into a couple of films.
That we do. Yeah, so this past week, I was able to see Conan the Barbarian in the theaters, which was very cool. So that was it was a Fathom Events event celebrating the 40th anniversary of Conan the Barbarian coming out. originally coming out in 1982. This is the this is the movie that made Arnold Schwarzenegger a household name. Not super like I think I don't know. I don't remember if it was super well received by critics back then, even back then. But it's become quite an epic. It's it's John Milius is the director. Obviously, it stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as Conan. You have James Earl Jones as the big villain. Growing up, when I would watch this movie, Sandal Bergman, who plays Valeria, who is like the female in this movie, I had a huge crush on her. It's narrated by Mako, he's an actor we have lost on this plane, but he is a legendary voice, a very cool voice, and co-written by Oliver Stone. I don't know if many people know that the screenplay was co-written by him.
Wow.
But it was just very cool to see it in the theaters. It was very cool to like hear the music in this is like so epic. Um, and it's a movie that came out in 1982. It definitely it kind of opened the door for like the barbarian sword and sorcery type movies to kind of, I believe, come back to theaters for a little while. And yeah, it was really great. And then I immediately went home and I had to watch Conan the Destroyer, the sequel to it, and it was really kind of interesting to see the change between like Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer. There was a 2 year difference, but in that 2 years, um, Arnold had blown up, literally and figuratively. Like he got more popular and he returns to Conan, the character of Conan. He's more jacked and more tanned and more oiled up, and Conan the Destroyer. To me, I think I kind of think it's a better movie, and I don't know if that's sacrilege to say, but all in all, I think it's a better movie. It's strange, like Wilt Chamberlain. I don't know if he's in this movie. I don't know if it's his only movie appearance. Basketball legend Wilt Chamberlain.
I think Will Chamberlain. I'm trying to think. I know that there were other basketball players that made their way into some of the like
Well,
kung fu films of the 70s
Kareem
and the 80s.
Abdul-Jabbar did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anybody if he was in any of those.
Well, if I click, well, I think, yeah. I mean, if you literally click on Wilt Chamberlain
Yeah,
on the old EMDB, yeah, it looks like this was his. Oh no. I mean, he was in supposedly he was in Any Given Sunday,
nice.
and he was on The Commish once. But yeah, he's in this. Who else is Mako returns? And yeah, and Grace Jones is in it. I don't if you guys don't know who Grace Jones is. She's kind of like an icon in and of herself. Um,
This was
but I
like her coming out party to America, right? I don't think that we really, other than fashion world, I don't think we knew her very much before this film.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's like, and then you move into like it's not a Conan movie, but then you have Red Sonja, which was played by what's her face? Who was also in War and dated Flava Flav later on in her life.
Brigitte Nielsen.
Brigitte Nielsen, yeah. So these Arnold has ushered in a lot of other very interesting actors who are to me are not commercial, they're different and they're funky and they're weird and it's cool and they're eccentric.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it was really cool to kind of just revisit these movies. It's cool to kind of see Arnold back in his day. The thing that just frustrates me is both of these Conan movies, they either start or they end with Conan old with an awesome beard, sitting on a throne, and they're like, but talking about how he becomes king eventually, but that's a story for another time. And we haven't gotten that story. I don't know if we're gonna get that story. They keep talking about possibly doing another movie. I don't know if it's gonna happen. I don't know if Arnold can do another Conan movie. I think it's always possible, but tick tock, tick tock. I need that third Conan movie. And Red Sonja is not a Conan movie.
Well, and they tried to pass the baton to like do a modern retake of this with Jason Momoa, and we talked about it a little bit before we even started recording that even Jason Momoa kind of discourages people about that film and wants to like write it off. It doesn't seem like it has that the torch has successfully been passed. But it
Yeah.
does seem
No.
like eventually it needs to be a trilogy, right? Like, so either we get an older, broken down Conan and Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back, or somebody's going to have to come back and revamp this series.
I mean, or like, you know, I'm sure this will come up when we talk about Avatar, both Avatars. But it's like unless they do a fully rendered Arnold Schwarzenegger, then I don't know. We'll see.
We're gonna turn him into a Navi. That would be cool.
Yes, yes, we're gonna turn him into a Nazi.
All right, so we're out of Cromland. We're going to jump over to Apollo 10 and a half, A Space Age Childhood. This is a Richard Linklater film. It is all shot in most of it shot on a giant green screen, but then animated in a very similar fashion to rotoscoping. I will say this is one of those movies that's very much Linklater showing you his love of growing up in Texas, being a kid in Texas in the 60s. So if you've ever seen Slacker or any of the other films that he's made, he definitely has this like approach to what he wants us to remember and think about. And I think he grew up in a time where he's very fond and familiar of. So it's full of nostalgia for anybody between the ages probably of like 60 and 40. There's a big enough swath that you will recognize so much of what's going on here. Mostly because so many of the things that happened in the 60s carried over to the 70s for us 70s kids, right? Like so at one point he's talking about the television shows that the kids can watch, and there's only 3 channels, but he puts up the logos in on the television of all the shows that they're talking about. Most of those shows were in syndication when I was a kid. So I watched most of them. But it's also funny because he's like, it's the first generation of syndication. So he puts up all the shows that are syndicated from before. And I watched all those shows in syndication. So it's like, I Love Lucy. Like it's amazing how much we in America seem to latch onto the nostalgia of the late 50s through this into the 70s, basically, and how much of that tried to carry over, how much it was a part of everyday life for kids in the late 70s and early 80s, and how much the 60s influenced that is the thing I would note. I think where it's a little different today, I think that things move a little faster. There's a lot more niches and a lot less monoculture. So you don't have as much like penetration of a show or media or things like that. But that was the thing I walked away from this film is like, God, so much of his experiences in his life between like 1967 and 1969 when they actually land on the moon are like things I recognize. It may not have been my direct access. I didn't have this exact thing happen in my life, but it's familiar, right? The games the kids play, they play like Red Rover at one point, and a kid, they're playing it as like 13-year-old kids. So the kid runs through the last pair of hands and breaks the kid's arm. And it's like a pretty bad compound fracture. And he's like, he talks about the fact that his life at that point was always one step away from pain. Like you were either getting slapped or getting, and it was super funny because he was like, we played games until we didn't play them. And then we stopped playing Red Rover after this. We played other games until somebody got hurt, and the kids like are riding behind a truck that's shooting DDT into the air for the mosquitoes. And he makes a joke like in the narration, he's like, this is probably the last, generation of kids that rode behind the DDT spraying truck. And then he gets back to his house in the same moment and they're spraying for roaches. And he's like, and then we got home and they were basically dropping a neurotoxin in our house to get rid of those 2 roaches we saw in the last month. It's just so much about like being about our age, maybe a little older than you and I, but how much of that carried over to our lifetime, the idea of like summertime, you're just outside of your house doing stuff all day, and he grew up this story is set around Houston in like 67, 68. So it's a very like suburban area, but very much influenced by NASA. So everything in that area, right? Like you've got the Astrodome being built at that time period with AstroTurf. There's Astroland, right? Like everything has something to do with space. And it's so interesting because he even talks about like science class felt relevant for the first time because they were doing things that were like about cosmology and about like space and about like, so all those things felt real. So it was such a weird echo chamber for the kids of that time period, because like here we are with Apollo 12 about to launch, or Apollo 11 about to launch, and they go through the idea that like the first batch of people got burned on the pad as they were about to go through an ignition sequence. And in our generation we went through like losing the shuttle, so there's a lot of corollaries to being in school and watching the launch. And I was very charmed by it. I think the reason it's also super charming is you've got Jack Black being the voice of the older version of the child that is the main character. So he's like the narrator for the whole thing.
Mhm.
So you've got like Jack Black's robust, like boyish adult voice being the voice of this child, from his memories, which I think is really important.
That's cool. And I see in the cast Zachary Levi is in it also, right?
Yeah, so it's also a little bit of like a fable, or like flights of fancy for the main character Stan. He is in school and basically gets taken into another room, and it turns out it's two men who work at NASA who are like, your math grades are pretty good, and your science projects at the last science fair were pretty good. And we really could use your help because we made the cockpit too small for our astronauts. So then it becomes this like fake internal version of like Stan learning how to be an astronaut.
Mm.
So there's a little bit of that strung throughout it. It's definitely not 100% like a narrative story. It's a little bit of flights of fancy. But there's a really great line near the end where like they go to lay him down and he's sleeping, and his dad is like, I want him to be able to tell his grandkids about the walking on the moon. And his mother says like, you know how it is, like he'll remember every aspect of this because that's how memory works, right? Like it'll be his. He'll see it so many
Mhm.
times, it'll be fine. So it's interesting that like we're seeing this whole movie where like he has injected himself into the story, in this like flights of fancy kind of like daydreaming kind of way. So he'll remember all of it. Like every aspect of this is burned into every kid's mind who was around in '69 and watched the moon landing.
Mm.
It's not something you can get away from because the footage has been played a billion times, right? Like it's been your whole life.
Right.
But yeah, it's so charming, and I think the fun part of it is you've got like really cool actors playing all these main characters, and Glenn Powell's in it as Zachary Levi's partner. They're really great. I think the parents are great. You got Lee Eddy and Bill Wise playing the mom and dad. Bill Wise is so funny. He has just that sort of grumpy dad context.
Mm.
He's a guy who deals with logistics for getting stuff around for NASA, like shipped from here to there to this to that. So he's so proud when they walk on the moon because he's part of NASA. He's like part of the family. And his wife looked at him and it was so charming. She's just like, congratulations. And he's like, well, it's all of us. And like that's how you felt when you worked for big corporations back in the day, that you were part of the team. And I feel like we've
Sure.
lost a little bit of that like sort of Americana, and the way that people felt about their jobs has changed. And I think it's so charming. If you have an hour and 20 whatever it is, 100 minutes, it's so
Mhm.
beautiful. I love the style of animation. I love A Scanner Darkly. It's like one of my favorite like versions of this type of film where it's
Mhm.
rotoscoped. I don't know if this is direct rotoscoping, but it's Richard Linklater. He's done so many films, and he just gets a chance to like do this one, like, I'm gonna tell another story about my childhood, and it's definitely inspired by his life and where he grew up. But like it's just Americana nostalgia is really what it feels like,
That's very
to
cool.
me. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely want to check that out. I was not aware that it came out.
And it's on
Um,
Netflix, if we didn't mention that. So absolutely, and it's been nominated or will likely be nominated for a lot of animation awards because of the way it was created. I
mm,
don't know that it has a chance of winning, especially after our last main review. But I do think it should be in the conversation. That Marcel the Shell, right? Turning Red. There's a whole bunch of great animation. Strange World. There's a lot of really fun films this year that are in the animation space. So it's pretty crowded with good films, but this is one that I hope at least gets a little bit more of a nod when it gets nominated for more awards.
cool. Before we jump into all things Pandora, I just wanted to talk really quickly about a really great kind of holiday horror thriller that I watched recently Better Watch Out, which came originally came out in 2016, and I think in some circles this is kind of like already become a bit of a cult classic, especially around this time of year. Um, it's the story of a babysitter who um, is babysitting this young boy and this young boy has a crush on his babysitter, and it's during the Christmas season, and all of a sudden, they encounter a home intruder and that is just the very beginning of it. And you, I didn't know much about this movie except the movie poster is really cool, but um, you I didn't know where this movie was going. I was so blown away and so impressed and so into this movie. It's so good. It's all the acting is really good. Um, it's suspenseful. You don't know what's going to happen next. Um, it's also shot very much like a Chris Columbus movie, like a Home Alone or something, where it's like very clean and very well lit, which like adds to the horror
Hmm.
aspect of it. But there's actually, to call it a horror movie, I think is a disservice. I don't think it's a horror movie. I think it's like a scary movie, a thrilling, scary movie that you can watch over the holiday season. Kudos to um, the stars Olivia. I don't know how to say her last name, but it's Dejonge, Dejonga maybe,
Hmm.
if you spice it up a little bit, and then I think Levi Miller. Um, They're just great. It's, like, fantastic. There's a quick and, like, there's a small role that Patrick Warburton, plays. He plays the dad who is in the beginning of the movie, he's in the end of the movie because, he and his wife, played by Virginia Madsen, are going to a holiday party. Um, but yeah, it's like if you want a messed up, freaky, crazy version, I guess, of Home Alone, you should watch this movie. And I think actually you would probably enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. 'Cause it's not like
Cool.
freaky scary or anything. It's like it's thrilling, and there's when you meet the antagonists of the movie, you're like, "Yes, I can't wait till you get your comeuppance."
I mean, that's always a good sign when you're like, I can't wait for this person to die. Like,
Right.
cool. I think we're gonna just so we're not gonna spend a lot of time on Avatar at this point, but I really did want to note that there's some wackiness. I think in James Cameron's sort of filmography, he's held off on releasing 4K versions of almost all of his films. There's a lot of looming knowledge right now that I think Abyss is going to come out in 4K the beginning of 2023, and I'm super surprised that they didn't release Avatar in 4K leading into Avatar: The Way of Water. But this week I watched it on Disney Plus, and I can tell you very pointedly, I don't think I've seen this film since 2009. I think I saw it in the theater, and this is the first time I've seen it since then. And
Mm.
I've lived with a lot of people across all of film Twitter, across a lot of podcasts, being like, this film doesn't have any, it has no relevance. People don't talk about it. People don't. Going back and watching Avatar, I was very moved by the film.
Wow.
It holds up in a way that I wasn't expecting. It's a lot. I know there was a lot of complaints about it being like, this is basically Fern Gully or Pocahontas or this or that. I think that is a really derogative way to discuss this film. I think what James Cameron has done throughout his career is make giant blockbuster films in innovative ways. And the story and the dialogue is like one component of the thing he is trying to accomplish,
Mhm.
right? So many times the writer will focus heavily on like telling the story. And I feel like James Cameron, because he does all of it, because he's been an auteur for so long, he cares about the final product less than he cares about the individual pieces of it. Once he establishes he can do the technology, then he wants to leverage that technology to tell a story, right? I feel like he almost backs into the story based on what he thinks he can accomplish or what he thinks he can push his production crew to do. Like
Mhm.
I think with Abyss, one of the funny stories I heard, I just recently listened to a podcast where people talked about like working with James Cameron, and one of his production people, when the Abyss was coming out, there was no technology for making underwater beings at that point. It
Nope.
didn't exist.
Yeah.
So his director of photography learned how to program in the CGI code bases, the types of environments, the frameworks, so they could create it. And then they wanted to shoot all this underwater, but they didn't have any place to shoot it. So they scouted a non-functioning nuclear reactor that wasn't
Yeah.
ever finished,
Right.
and then used that as the water tank. So like
Yeah.
he constantly pushes not only himself but the people in his production company and is the people who are the heads of all of his departments, in my opinion, to
Well,
create
and the
something.
studios movies too. Like he gets things done. Like he just strong arms studios and be like, no, this is what I need, and it'll pay off in the end.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I heard recently was one of the executive producers on Avatar was just like, can we take out all this tree hugging and hippie stuff? And he's like, I don't know if you know this, but that's what I care about in this film. So it's not coming out. And the executive producer just had to back down, right? Like,
Yeah.
that not many writer director people in this world get to do, like Tom Cruise can call up and be like, we're making Top Gun 2. And it's like, okay, cool. How much money do you need? Right. I think
Mhm.
James Cameron is one of the few people that like halfway through the production of Avatar, The Way of Water, called Sony and said, we're rewriting the script. We need to take a break. And it's like, what do you mean? We're a year and a half into production. It was like,
Mhm.
it's not good. We're stopping for a minute. Like, and like shut down production for like 3 months. Like, not because of the pandemic, because they wanted to rewrite the script, which is crazy. He's a unique being. And the thing I keep hearing that I find very amusing, it comes up all the time on like the Big Picture or any of the Ringer podcasts. I feel like Sean Fennessy should really get to wear a T-shirt that says like "Don't underestimate Big Jim," right? Like he's going to make a film that's going to make a lot of money and get everybody involved. Is what he does. And Avatar, just rewatching the first Avatar, I was like, God, I remember the feeling of coming out of the theater and being like, that was amazing.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm gonna like remember the story much more than I did the last time, except I just watched Avatar: The Way of Water, so now I have like another lens to add on top of it. So I
Well,
think it'll be a little more object permanence to me today than it did the first time.
I mean, depending on how the rest of this conversation goes, and I find out your feelings about Avatar: The Way of the Water. If you liked Avatar, you should definitely check out. You should definitely explore the director's cut, because there are more story points. Yes, there is a Navi love scene, but that's neither here nor there. They're just like there are cool things. It's just like watching a Zack Snyder director's cut, where like you get you get maybe a minute or 2 minutes here and there, but it just makes so much more sense.
Yeah,
And as far as like the first Avatar movie goes, I saw it multiple times in the theater. I'm a big fan of it. Uh, James Cameron even admits that he's like, I like the story of Pocahontas. I wanted to make a movie about it.
yeah,
It kind of annoys me when people are like, I'm smarter than everyone else because I like. It's like it's such a sorry, it's such a fucking like hipster thing to do when you're like,
yeah,
I know Fern Gully, I know Pocahontas, so I'm gonna shit on this cool new movie that everyone likes. Whatever. Like, also, like I've thought about this a lot. Like, yes, it's Dances with Wolves as well.
yeah.
Let's not leave that out either. But these stories need to keep being told. I mean,
Yes,
how many times has Shakespeare been redone? Like these stories keep being told, and they are told in at least different ways to reach different people, or the
hmm
people who messages haven't hit yet. Maybe it'll hit them now. You know what I mean? Like as maybe I don't know if it's cheesy as it sounds, but like when you watch, especially when I watch, we'll get into Avatar: Way of the Water, but like there are parts of that movie where I'm like, God damn, like are we still whaling in this day and age? Like, can we fucking stop that, please? Um, so yeah, there's the the Fern Gully comparisons just don't sit
yeah.
well with me when bring that out. I'm like, go away,
So a couple of notes that I want to bring up. One that's really impressive to me is the So we're so used to, or at least I'm so used to today, because I have a 65-inch 4K television, to watching things in 4K. And Disney Plus will stream 4K movies and
Mhm.
IMAX enhanced, right? So filling the full aspect ratio. So doing it like pretty close to the IMAX 178:1 ratio. This movie fills the screen, so it is absolutely filling. It's probably in that IMAX enhanced ratio.
Mhm.
Um, I'm gonna guarantee that this is probably one of the most detailed, high bitrate HD streams that comes out of Disney Plus. The
Sure.
colors are vibrant. It looks so good for a film that was made in 2009, and so much of it was computer generated.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how vibrant this movie looks. The other thing I will note is I think having a good 4K television that can handle the 1080p to 4K up conversion is probably helping this film on Disney Plus,
Mm.
because in my opinion it looks as good, or as close to as good as when I saw it in the theater. It's been a
Mhm.
long time, but boy, the colors are vibrant. There's a huge amount of contrast in all those sequences in the jungle in the evening. You
Mhm.
never lose any creature. Like the first attack, that when Jake Sully's out and it's nighttime, and the creature that's kind of like a tiger, like a jaguar, attacks him,
Mhm.
there's texture and context and moisture, and
Oh,
it's
yeah, they're
all
all, like,
there.
wet and slimy, yeah. It's pretty cool.
I was really impressed with watching this at home, and I was expecting to be disappointed
Mhm.
because I didn't think it was going to look as good as it did. I'm blown away by how good it looks on Disney Plus on a 4K television. Even without it getting a modern HDR reinterpretation, without it being up converted, without them doing a new release with a higher bit rate and a higher negative that they're coming from. It's
Mhm.
really impressive what they're able to pull off, and the sound is really crisp. There's so much stuff happening in the jungle around you all the time, and it's just a rock solid 5.1 surround sound. There's no
Mhm.
object oriented sound, and it's crisp. I did
Cool.
turn my television from adaptive sound to surround to try to remove the not let the algorithm try to figure out what was going on, which is what the Atmos is better at. But in this case, I turned it down to surround, and I was extremely impressed with the experience I had.
Cool. Yeah, and, like, I mean, starting with Avatar and then it just gets exponentially even more in depth in Avatar: Way of the Water. Like, James Cameron, like, he hired people and also helped create new languages, created there's, like he, like, went all the way down to the minutia in detail, like, the biology of this world, the the ecosystem of the world, the like, how the like, why, for some reason, do animals have extra limbs in this world versus our and there's, like, very little, like, warm-blooded, feathery animals. I don't know. It's just it's like incredibly impressive from like top to bottom. And then when you get into like the like earth realm with like mechanical stuff. I mean, James Cameron loves an exosuit. He's always going to put an exosuit in every one of his films if he can. And if it's not going to be exosuit, it's going to be some sort of liquid energy being or something. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um But it's all like if you were to like grab pick up the art of Avatar, the first one, like every one of the guns has a name, every one of the planes has a name, every one of the bulldozing things has a name. Like it's like, and then all the animals have like names, genus, species, all this stuff. So the
Yep.
the amount of detail and care that he put into this was incredible. And it's he wants to yeah, he wants to talk about you know the you know people colonizing other lands, stealing from places like the rainforest, or like what we did. The early settlers came to America and like displaced the indigenous people here. Like these are things that like he cares about. Like he is like a conservationist. He does care about the Amazon. He does, he like, especially with Way of the Water, like, between Avatar 1 and like Way of the Water, he was doing a lot of conservation for,
Yep.
trying to save the oceans. So
Yeah, I think it's funny listening to you talk about it reminds me of the way that people talk about Jim Henson when he was creating like Dark Crystal, how he
Hmm.
had like languages and he had linguists creating the languages for all of the races, and
Hmm.
like everything had a backstory, and why a tool was created was because they
Yeah.
couldn't, like, that level of detail. And I feel like that there's not that many auteurs today that are doing that, and I feel like
No.
James Cameron is kind of, as much as Spielberg can do Fablemans and it can be this love letter to cinema, there's not a lot of James Camerons like out there today. And I think like him and like Henson and him, and there's only a few. Like you can go back to you know uh earlier cinema, but like I think you've got like Coppola at his high point, Scorsese, right? Like, but the two we're talking about here, Henson and Big Jim, are two people who care about every nuance of every aspect of the world they create. It's
Well,
almost
yeah,
like George R. R. Martin in Game of Thrones, right? Like you can say whatever you want, but he like wrote a history of the world that
sure.
eventually became House of the Dragon,
I mean,
or like
yeah,
Tolkien, like
that's exactly what I was gonna say. Like I think the work that James Cameron is doing on these Avatar movies, and he's got 5 scripts in the can. Like
and they've
he,
shot 2 films here and a third of the fourth, from what I understand.
uh, something along those lines. Like yeah, like but really quick, like yeah, he's Tolkien. He's Tolkien in this. Like he's
Yep.
got all the languages and everything. It's like it's everything that Tolkien did with his world. I feel like Cameron's doing with this because he wants to make like the definitive like bio sci-fi epic, and I think he's doing it. I saw an interview with him where he was saying, and this could all be just like coming from his mouth, so it could totally be a lie in the sense that he's like, I handed in the script for the third one and I got like 7 pages of notes back. I handed in the script for the fourth one and I got 3 pages of notes back. And then I handed in the fifth one and the studio executives just wrote back, "Holy shit." And he's like, "That's great. Where are the notes?" He said, "No notes. Holy shit." And I was like, I mean, that could be him just doing fan service, but I
Yeah.
think he's that insane and he's that passionate
Yeah.
and he's that bombastic that, like if we get 5 movies, when I'm like 80 years old, but by the time it comes out, it'll be incredible.
Yeah, it was fun to revisit and to go back into Pandora. So in reality, I blocked off my Friday morning to
Mhm.
watch Avatar in one sitting, and then I had a meeting scheduled in the after that, and then I
Mhm.
went to a 3 o'clock showing of Avatar: The Way of Water. So I spent 6 hours in Pandora in
So you
about 8 hours.
Yeah, so you, like, left that theater at, like,
Six
or, like,
25.
wow, there must have been not a lot of trailers then.
So it was a 3 o'clock show. The movie's 3:07, and I had 7 trailers. Also, if we're gonna talk about that,
Well,
Marvel,
that's
settle down with your friggin' 3D
well
trailers, buddies.
well, we'll leave. I think it was fun that we wrapped what was it? We wrapped last episode or 2 episodes ago with talking about some trailers, so maybe
Yeah.
we could do that again because there are a couple trailers that came out that are worth discussing
Okay.
really quick.
So let's end this here, and we're gonna say Avatar still holds up. You should see it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you have a decent television and halfway decent sound system. It will make it worth your while. And if you are wondering whether or not this is a type of movie that will play with your kids or play for people who've never seen it before, I think it's a kind of universal story. And there's no
Mhm.
reason why you can't show a 12-year-old kid Avatar and get them excited about this film before you take them to see Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yeah, totally. And also, I think I think if you've got an incredible sound system and television, I think that your experience will be amazing. But that being said, even if you don't, I still think what they're putting on screen with the visual effects, the
Mhm.
incredible performance capture, all this stuff, I think you're still in for a treat. Even if you were, you know, don't stream it on your phone.
Yeah, go to your local used electronics store and buy a 3D TV and 3D Blu-ray player, and a pair of headphones, and you're going to be very happy for $300 you can really experience it the way that James wanted you to see it at home.
Mm.
because that's very possible today. That technology is no longer really that positive pervasive. But for a while, everything was a television that could support Blu-ray, and there were Blu-ray that could support 3D, and there were Blu-ray players that supported 3D play. And they're really inexpensive because they're probably sitting on a shelf collecting dust somewhere. So that is the other thing I haven't done that I think is really interesting. Is there's a lot of people who talk about this as a 3D experience at home is pretty amazing.
Interesting. I've never actually seen a 3D movie at my home.
Yeah, me neither. So how did you? Let's jump to our main review, Avatar: The Way of Water. John,
Yeah.
why don't you tell us about the format you saw it in, since that is a big portion of what's going on here and a lot of the conversation people are trying to figure out.
I saw this in 3D. Are they even offering this non 3D? Is that a
Yes.
thing?
Yep.
Okay. So I saw this movie. Um, I saw like a 10 a.m. showing. It was the first showing of the day. Shout out to I was up in Syracuse doing a show. And shout out to Marcus Theaters Movie Tavern out there. I'm not aware of this chain except that it's in the Syracuse area, and they're one of those places that have really great reclining chairs, pretty solid screens, and you can order like full on drinks and dinner menus and stuff. So
Nice.
it's nice to have found an alternative to Regal Theater up when I was there. Shout out to Marcus Theaters. I saw it. I saw their version of like whatever their highest scale uh, screen projection was, and in 3D. What about you?
So I saw it at my local AMC in Potomac Mills. I saw it in the laser IMAX 3D. So it was definitely the
Laser.
high frame rate. Yeah, this is a big IMAX theater. It's not. I don't know if it's a full real deal IMAX screen. I don't think it's. I'm not sure if it's the right height, but it
Mm,
is the closest thing to an IMAX theater without me going into Washington D.C. because there's one at the
mm.
Smithsonian in DC that's pretty amazing. If you ever want to go see footage of like space stuff done in IMAX, that's the place. It's
Cool.
like a 7-story screen. It's unbelievable.
Mm,
But this was pretty good. I think I saw it in 3D. It's been a while since I saw a film in 3D. I think one of the last ones might have been one of the Harry Potter films, maybe one of the last Spider-Man films from Tobey Maguire. But yeah, it's been a minute since I've seen a 3D film, and
mm,
I was pleasantly surprised by the vibrancy
mm.
of this. Given the fact that it was a laser IMAX screen, I expected it to be pretty good, but I was really impressed with how bright everything was. A lot of times with 3D, you end up where things feel a little muddy, but even it didn't feel muddy at all, to be honest. I think it was I will say the movie felt a little more muted than I was expecting color wise. As
Really?
vibrant as Pandora was just after coming out of the original Avatar, I was surprised that there were less vibrant like violets and teals and things like that. So like when we meet other people, the color isn't as it's not as electric in color. I feel like they toned down a little bit of the like vibrancy on some of those colors and made them a little more uh
I don't know, man. I might blame your screen.
really.
I don't know because I mean I'm sure you're gonna have to see this again.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I'm,
Um,
I'm trying to decide where I'm going to see it again. So around me, I have an Angelica, I have a Cinemark, I have a Regal, and I'm trying to decide what the next play for this is going to be. But I do want to do it in a large format and in a premium, probably 3D. My wife hasn't seen it yet, so
hmm.
probably be one of the. I don't know if she's ever seen a 3D film, so this might be her first 3D film.
Whoa! I mean, we'll shoot for the stars, and you're gonna hit a star.
Yeah.
I just realized, like, if someone's listening, hi, how are you? I hope you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah,
If they
welcome
don't
aboard.
know, if you don't know what the first Avatar was, it's a sci-fi movie where humans go to another planet far, far away, and they are pillaging it of a resource that they they now need on Earth called unobtainium. Thank God. Spoiler alert, they don't really talk about unobtainium in the second one because it's the dumbest name you've ever heard of in your life. But anyway, the first one,
I,
it's all about mining this unobtainium, and it's about trying to befriend the indigenous species, which is the Navi, which are these like larger than human cat-like people with uh, organic, naturally occurring carbon fiber, like almost like super strong bones and everything, and they can kind of plug into the natural world. And then this guy Jake Sully comes, and they kind of put that you can kind of like get plugged into a genetic avatar, and then he becomes a genetic avatar and kind of befriends them, but then falls in love, and then that's kind of where that story. Um, he kind of, I mean, yes. I'm not gonna say it's not. It's a white savior thing, but there's other things that are around it as well.
and those genetic avatars are based on the race the Navi. So they look exactly like the Navi. They are built similarly. They can connect with the world. So they basically connect your consciousness into a organic generated version of a Navi with your DNA,
Yeah,
which is why we meet Jake Sully at the beginning because his brother was a scientist who died and they were twins. So his genetic DNA is exactly the same, so he could plug into this avatar. That is the sort of you have to accept this, you have to buy into this premise going in that this Marine who is now paralyzed is going to take his spot on Pandora where his science twin was supposed to be.
hmm. So that's kind of the first movie in a super super tiny nutshell, and you should still watch it if you haven't watched it. And if you, I would say like if you're gonna see the second one, I think it's a good idea to at least rewatch the first one. Um,
Yes, I
but
agree.
they do like a super super quick like 3-second recap of the first Pandora in a sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's also James Cameron just being a cocky motherfucker and just expecting you to have seen the first one.
Well, did you hear in one of the interviews somebody asked him what was a good time to go to the bathroom, and he was
Yes.
just like, "That's fine. You can go whenever
He's
you
like, "Go."
want because you're going to see it again. So who cares? You'll see it the next
Yeah,
time."
and
Yeah.
I mean, kudos to that. I mean, you
I mean,
know.
he's also confident, and he's right. Like, I
Yeah,
mean, the first film was the highest grossing film of all time. This
yeah,
film, they're trying to downplay. So we're recording this on Monday, and they're trying to downplay that its weekend was a disappointment. It has made $434 million
yeah,
globally this weekend.
yeah,
I don't see how that's a disappointment. Just some side notes, right? Like, this is a 20th century film. 20th century is owned by Disney. Disney owns Marvel. Do you know what they cleared out? Everything. There's nothing coming that is going to take away from this film
yeah,
from now until February. There's not
yeah.
a release in the Disney Marvel ecosystem until Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So
And
that
and
means
and
James
that's not
Cameron has
even
has like 2 full months to just be like, "What's up, kids? Come see my film." Like,
yeah. Um, yeah, and so in this movie, some things that I thought were really interesting in the very get-go is in the first movie, the kind of major antagonist, is played by Stephen Lang, played who plays this general who is like he's like the military security guy of the humans. Um, Portrick, I'm not I don't think I'm saying that right.
Quaritch.
Quaritch,
Yeah. It is
but
my job to keep you alive, and I am going to fail with some of you, right?
yeah,
Like, his
he's
his
like
his first speech is one of the best things in that entire film, in my opinion.
yeah, and like I was not aware who Stephen Lang was before this, and he's been in like Tombstone and stuff, but like in the first Avatar movie, this was like a definitive role, I think, in my opinion, for him. I was like, when I see him, this is what I think of, like just like an old army badass who is super sinister. He's like a modern day evil Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, but like in
Because
the
he's
James
handsome
Cameron
and he
way.
can sing, probably. Yes, I agree.
You never know. But anyway, so the interesting thing that happens is he does not survive the first movie. However, but we find out in the second movie that like his pretty much his consciousness has been put onto a USB file, sent to Earth, and he's being sent back now to Pandora inside of an avatar himself. So the guy in the first movie who hated the Na'vi with a passion is now a Na'vi. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think that we get a lot of interesting things that happen in the Way of
Yep.
the Water or Way of Water where yeah, he's evil and
Yep.
and he bounces back and forth though, I think like between like cuz he sometimes he's like I'm not actually, you know, Stephen Lang's character. I'm like a Na'vi version of him or
Yeah.
and then but to me
Well, in the
it's
first movie, he is so like one note, like evil, twisting his mustache villain. And in this version, in Avatar: The Way of Water, he is a little bit less that. You're. I think what we're so my interpretation is this is probably going to be a Vader transformation.
oh
I
yes,
think we're going to
absolutely.
see by the fourth film that he's coming around. So we should take a moment. This movie opens up, and Jake Sully has been is married to Natiri, and they have three kids of their own. They've adopted two more kids. One of those kids is Kiri, and Kiri is a Avatar, a Navi that was born from the body of the Avatar of Sigourney Weaver's character when she died.
Mhm.
So at the end of the last movie, they're trying to upload her consciousness from her human body into her avatar body,
And it
and
doesn't
it
work.
fails. Her body
Right.
is too destroyed. But immaculate conception happens. She turns out that she's pregnant, gives birth to a child. That child is Kiri. Kiri is now one of the family. She's
Well, you don't know if it's immaculate conception. That's a
there's a
bit
lot of hand wavy like we're not going to discuss this in any way, shape, or form in this film, which I think is
well,
really funny.
well, no, but the thing is they do discuss that they're Kiri and some of the other, young Na'vi characters are like, "Who do you think your dad is?" And
Yeah,
there's like a bunch there's a bunch of things that happen and, they joke about how,
maybe it's
uh,
Norm.
Norm, who was in the first movie, he was also one of the Avatar drivers,
Yeah,
but more human in this one,
yeah. Joel
and,
David Moore plays Norm, and they're all messing with her. But also the other adopted child, basically, they often almost treat him like he's just a feral pet, but it is Spider, a human child who spends all of his time with the children of Natiri and Jake. And basically is one of them. May be in love with Kiri, is the way it looks, and there's a lot of affection between the two of them. But
mhm,
he is a human child that couldn't go home at the end of the last movie because they can't put children into basically stasis to go back on a
cryos,
long trip, like
right.
cryo. Yeah. So he's left behind. And what we find out is
Wait,
eventually,
Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Just gonna say spoilers, spoilers, spoilers.
well, we
Just a
can't go any further without, like, literally that happens in the first 20 minutes.
well, we don't find out who his father is. I mean,
Well, while they're
20
busting
minutes
Kiri's chops about who your father is, at one point he has the actor who plays poor Spider
later.
has to say the words. Maybe it's sometimes better you don't know who your dad is.
Mhm.
So there's an illusion of the fact that like we're supposed to know something is up.
Right,
Uh,
and then you find out later, like we said, spoilers, that Spider is indeed,
the
um,
biological son
what
of
how do you say his name?
General
Quar
Quaritch.
but yes, so he's the biological son of General Quaritch, and now he's referred to like so now Stephen Lang as an avatar is only referred to as Quaritch, not General Quaritch.
Yep.
Um, so there's a lot of interesting things that happen between um, this like human boy and this like avatar version of his dad who he already hated and now hates because um, he's a bad guy, but also is probably pretty jealous of him because he's Navi and he
Right.
desperately would love to be Navi. So I think that there will be I feel like there will be interesting things that happen in the third one with that storyline.
Yeah. So I think when we're talking about this film, I don't want to go much past like the midpoint of the story is the way I would put it, John. I think if we hold everything to the first half of the film, like the
Mm.
first the first act and a half, I think is really enough for us to talk about, because the stuff that happens in the second half of the film is much more surprising at times, and I think also gives away a little bit more of where I think the future trilogy is going.
Mm.
So the one thing to note is Jake Sully and Natiri basically kick their kids out. They go have a date night. While they're having date night, they look up in the sky and they see bright lights happening, a new star. And Jake immediately knows that this is obviously the star people, the space
Sky
people,
people. Yeah.
sky people, which are the people, the humans, are coming back. They
Mm.
land on the planet. There's no talk of unobtainium, as John mentioned. They've decided that Earth is no longer habitable, and they are just going to terraform this planet and turn it into something that they want. So it's going to become New Earth, is the way they basically lean in on.
And
But as yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and we meet the new general who's in charge of this mission, and it's Edie Falco, and I didn't know Edie Falco was gonna be this, and I was like, "Hell's yeah!"
She's so badass using her
Yeah,
mech to drink coffee. Like she's a
yeah.
big cup of coffee that she's drinking with them. It's so funny. Yeah, I'm on board. More Edie Falco, please. But
Mhm.
so as part of this, the group that's coming back includes these Navi avatars that these military folks have been uploaded into. So it's not just Quaritch, but it's also like three or four or six of the original military folks had all their consciences uploaded. What's
Yeah,
great is you find out about all of this because Quaritch is required to record a note to himself in case he dies. And you
right.
get Giovanni Ribisi's character in the background just being like, yada, yada, yada. Come on.
Yeah,
Like,
a little cameo there, yeah.
it's so funny how, like, I love a director or a screenwriter that basically decides you're going to keep up. That like 2.5 minute video feels so much like, all right, like you don't need to know any of this except this one little
Mhm.
piece, right? And like stop thinking about it. We're good. Like it's happening. Move along. And I feel like the
Yeah.
same thing with Curie, right? Like there's a note about like she was born from Sigourney Weaver's avatar. Don't worry about it. Like we're gonna get there is what it feels
Yeah,
like, you know.
yeah, so when Jake Sully kind of drops that bomb of an info on us in the very beginning, I almost, like, missed it for a half second. I was like, "Wait, what was that?" And then, like, it goes by so fast
Yeah.
that I was like, "Wait, who is she a surrogate of? What body was she in?" But it all gets reinforced later, so,
Yep.
you just kinda gotta go along for the ride as you're watching it. Um
And then at that point, they decide that they're going to try to take out Jake Sully because he has led the previous rebellion. So, sort of cut off the head of the snake, and the snake will die, is the way they're looking at the Navi at this point, because he was able
Mhm.
to pull together what they thought were all the tribes of the Navi. But the reality is, we found out from the first film that it's not all of the tribes, because we did not meet the water tribe that we're about to meet in this film. And I
Mhm.
believe there are three other tribes that have been described in a bunch of articles that James
Yeah.
Cameron's talked about. So we've not
I'm
met all the Navi yet.
I'm sure there's as many tribes as they wanna make movies when
Right.
it comes to it. Um,
So he decides he's going to step down as the leader of the tribe he is leading and
well, he
pass it
see,
on.
he does this after they get attacked and they get introduced, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Quark or whatever, he's back. He's one of us now," so they can kind of they can get around Pandora without Pandora as almost as an organism attacking them.
Yep.
So they're super dangerous. So continue on from there. Sorry, I
Yeah,
just wanted to
so
get
it's great because what you find pretty quickly is he ends up getting Spider away from the family. So he captures the kids at the site where his original body was killed, and he sees that the
great
body
scene when
has
he yeah.
two arrows in it that Natiri basically lit him up, right?
Mhm.
So somebody gets shot with an arrow, and it's Natiri being badass, taking out one of his soldiers in Navi form, and so he realizes she's there. So he's got their kids, and all of them are together basically. And in the end, he loses the kids and keeps Spider. He's able to grab Spider and keep him along. So now you've broken apart the family unit, which Spider would be a part of, and Jake Sully and his family. He convinces Natiri that they should leave. It's better for the tribe,
Hmm.
because fighting them isn't worth it, and it's just going to
Yeah.
bring harm onto the tribe. So, which is the antithesis of what Jake Sully would have done probably in the past, because his background is he was a Marine.
Yeah. He's
Um,
like, kill, destroy,
yeah.
kind of.
So that's where I think you get to pick up. So we leave there and we go, and they fly on their on the creatures they were bonded with that we saw a lot in the first film, and they fly off from the new from the tribe that they were a part of and he was leading. And now
Yeah. So they were
John.
part of they were part of like the forest tribe,
Mhm.
or one of the forest tribes, and now they're crossing the oceans to go to more of like an ocean tribe. And this was, I mean, flat out, I mean, this is kind of James Cameron trying to create a Navi version of Maori or Samoan or Islander culture. It's kind of all mixed together. Um, Much like how he was doing with like indigenous people of like the Amazon, or indigenous people in what we call the United States now, in the first one. But dude, this blew me away because I wasn't I desperately tried not to pay too much attention um to the trailers, and I was like, cool, yes, I get it, Maori inspired avatars, or Navi people. But like biologically, they're super different. And I was like blown away, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I didn't see this in the trailer really, or I wasn't paying that much attention, but
There
um
was no real nod to it until you got to meeting with this new tribe.
yeah.
Um,
So they've got, and this is one of those cool details that James Cameron came up with, where they've got extra eyelids, because they swim all the time. So they're broader. Their shoulders and their forearms are broader. Their tails don't look like cat tails. They look more like a flatter kind of fin to help them.
yep.
And they're also different. Much like people are different shades of colors. Like they're a
Mhm.
different color too.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
kind of a teal, like a little more on the muted color scheme from my
mm,
perspective.
yeah. Um, and and for a long period of time in the movie, we experience Jake Sully, but mostly his children, trying to kind of assimilate into this new culture that they're in. They're not water people, so they can barely swim, so they have to learn how to swim. They have to learn how to breathe underwater. This is like a whole new biosphere where there's like different animals that they don't know anything about. So I found this part of the movie super interesting, and again, like the imagination of the artist that created all these different creatures like blew me away.
Mhm. I was really impressed with how real. So this is the thing I will say. I spent large portions of this film feeling like I had watched a film crew travel to another planet and shoot life on that planet. And that is
Mhm.
not how films like this usually feel.
Mm.
Everything felt pretty practical, right? Like
Yeah.
where the new race, where the new tribe lives, has the sort of bouncy like net material that they walk on. And
Mm.
what's great is the kids from the forest tribe find it weird. So they're like, you
Mhm.
can tell they're walking on it different than the kids who grew up there. And they're like
Sure.
treating it a little bit more like a trampoline. Like this all feels real in
Yeah.
one of, like, even little aspects. Like there are these giant plants that basically are underwater, and they capture air inside of them like a diving bell. And it's such a practical use of the fauna that would exist in this world. So you,
Mhm.
as a kid who's swimming, one of these Navi kids could swim up into it like almost like it was a diving bell and take a breath, and they could keep going. There was also other practical things, but just really cool how well and like seriously thought out every aspect of the water world is really brought to fruition here. How much of it feels like, oh, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Even like the little creature that they can put on their back, that they can connect in their tail braid to communicate with, and they can use them to breathe. That's not overutilized.
Yeah.
It's only used when they need it, which I think is really the way that people would use that, right? All the kids who grew up in this tribe have the ability to hold their breath for a really long time and slow down their heart, and like because that's just who they are. And
Yeah.
I just love that it was not overutilized. I expected the second half of the film to be nothing but like basically like glowing butterfly wings on their backs, but it's
Mhm.
so sparsely used that it's done in a way that just really shines a spotlight on the connection to the ecosystem. They don't
Mhm.
utilize it all the time, you
Yeah,
know.
they literally don't take advantage of it.
Yeah,
No. I mean, yeah, dude, like I it was super impressive. There's stuff that like you meet a lot of the wildlife of the ocean,
yep.
and there are a lot of moving scenes that like literally almost brought me to tears. I won't say that I was bawling, but like I literally got choked up um multiple times when they're interacting with these literally fake creatures because they don't exist, but they were so real and lifelike. You know what I mean? As in like these are it was all CGI. That's
Yep.
what I mean by they don't exist. But it's so well done that you just like I was so invested, you know, and it blew me away, man. Like yeah. I
I,
mean,
I will say one thing that's super that I was thinking about after the fact is so many of the scenes with Spider. So you have a human boy wearing a mask,
mhm,
and he is running around with Navi all throughout an environment that may or may not be CGI, and
mhm.
none of it feels fake.
Yes.
You're the idea that like when you take a step back, you're like 80% of what's in that frame is not there, and yet
Mhm.
he feels like he's interacting with these children. He feels like none of it feels like it's out of place. That might be the biggest, like those sequences might be the things that win it best effects and production design and things
Right.
like, because so much of those scenes, Spiders alone, like in a sequence with like people wearing ball suits and there's nothing else around them, it's giant green screen, and yet he's in the middle of this lush jungle, jumping, spinning, diving, with all these other characters that are about to be rendered. You know?
Well, I think the thing that blew my mind is there is a scene later on where he is like, he's like, I think he might have been on some sort of flotation device and in the water, helping like Navi kids get onto it as well.
Yeah,
And just like proportions were all correct. There was no like, like they didn't have to do like forced perspective. I'm almost curious now that we're talking about it. I'm like, was Spider CGI and they just performance capture like they just like they put because he's wearing a mask, right?
yeah.
They just have put his face in that mask and then they literally like was Spider in a motion capture suit the whole time too? Like the
Maybe,
actor and they
and they
I don't
rendered
know,
him
man.
into the world.
As a
Uh,
human, yeah. Just
it's
like
impressive.
totally doing over us.
I don't know how they accomplish it. I really hope that they put out when this film hits like distribution that there's a way for us
Mm,
to get all the behind the scenes material, because I
yeah.
think this is it's gorgeous. There's a couple of things I want to point out that I think, so we've been talking very positively. There's a couple of things that I found a little off putting in the film. So the first piece being like I feel like in this film we leaned a lot more into gender stereotypes in the Navi culture. If you
Mm,
think about it, like Natiri spends most of the film cooking for the kids and like only being Natiri when she's defending her kids.
mhm,
She's a great warrior, right? Like, and I feel like in the first film, the Navi was a very like sort of gender non-specific tribe, and this film
mhm.
felt more gendered, especially when you got to the water tribe. That
Right.
tribe, even though you can see that there is a nod that the tribal leader is getting approval from his wife before he says they can stay. Right? There's
Mhm,
definitely like a nod to there's a power structure, but inherently it still seems like there's a lot of gendered interactions in the tribe that felt I didn't feel after rewatching Avatar, which surprised me. And I think that, and then there's a lot of people who are complaining about it, but the kids. So one of the things that happens is they switch over from the language of the Na'vi to English because Jake at one point in narration says, speaking in Na'vi is as simple as English to me today. And what's great
Mhm.
is the words fade out as he says this, and now everybody speaks in English.
Yeah.
Very clever trope to move from one to the other.
Hmm.
Because of that, the kids say things like "bro, bro," and there's a
Yeah.
lot of "baby girl" and things like that, which are a little strange in this world. So I get that
Just
Jake Sully is an Earth creature that comes from the Marines and is the father of these kids. I don't think it's
Mhm.
wrong in the script. It just feels strange set in Pandora to hear that vernacular being thrown around.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I had the opposite effect when I heard those kinds of things. I thought it was actually kind of endearing, and I thought that it made them because the only people who do it are Jake Sully's kids, like you
Right.
said. Um, so I think it enforced the outsider feel,
Hmm.
not only from them, not only them within the island tribe, but also like they're mutants. Like they have like so Jake
Yep.
Sully has 5 fingers. They have 5 fingers because they're half breeds. Um, so I felt like that, like the way they talk and just like being around their father and like having that almost human component of with their speech. I don't know. It affected me differently.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the other thing that's funny is like, and it feels like something that could have been done in the '80s. His two older boys get in a fight with two of the boys in the new tribe, and he basically told them like, be on your best behavior. And then the kids come back, and the older one stays behind, and he sends his younger son to go apologize. And Jake finally says like, what do the other guys look like? He's like, worse than us. He's like, good, get out of here. And it's an interesting moment that feels like it could be straight out of a film in the '60s, the '70s. It's not the type of thing you see happen in a lot of cinema today, but also he is a Marine first, right? Like he
Absolutely.
brings
Yeah.
forward his culture, but it's an interesting moment that like I don't know that I would say is out of place in this world. It stood out to me as something
Mhm.
unique that I didn't expect. And the
Yeah.
way that he treats his family basically like they're a military unit. Well, no
Yeah.
surprise here, he's a Marine, right? Like,
Yeah.
and their
Yeah.
tribe is basically like a giant unit. So I'm not surprised that he does. It's just a little strange to be in a sci-fi universe and basically this is the way that he communicates with his family that he loves. And
Mhm.
but not wrong, just not what I was expecting. I
Yeah.
also never really thought about Jake Sully being a father. So it all is a little outside of what I was expecting. But nothing bad, just not. I wouldn't have put my finger on that would be the thing I'd walk away from the movie with.
Mhm. Yeah, I think well that was like the really one of the really interesting things about the whole movie in general is um like really enjoying the first Avatar and like um in the first Avatar also like Jake is like he's an ex-marine but he's broken cuz he's paraplegic and
Yeah.
he is now in this movie, he's like literally reborn, or he was reborn in the first movie. So
Yep.
it was interesting to kind of, yeah, to kind of quickly see him transition as we're watching the movie into a more of a fatherly figure. But it was very enjoyable. Like
Yeah.
I thought I would hate the kids too, and man, like I dug
The
all of them.
kids,
I thought
all
they
the
were
kid
all great.
actors were charming. I think they were
Yeah.
really. So Kiri, we've talked about, is actually born of Sigourney Weaver's Avatar, but is also acted and voiced by Sigourney Weaver. And a
Mm.
lot of people were worried about that. And I think honestly, they did a great job. Like she
Yeah.
feels so like old soully child, which I think is really
Yeah.
interesting, right? Like she doesn't feel
Mhm.
like a light, easy, breezy kid, but she also doesn't feel like a 70-year-old or 65-year-old woman. She feels
Mm.
like a kid with an old soul, somebody who's
Yeah.
like more contemplative than her siblings, right, in this world.
Yeah. And I do appreciate that, like as I'm quickly trying to just kind of like, breeze through. Um IMDb at the kids, it does seem like for the most part, these it's not like we got like an entire white savior family here. These kids seem like they're of multiple ethnicities and things like that, which I
Yep.
think is an important thing as moving forward with these movies and stuff. It's like if you're going to try, like, yes, they're blue cat people, but you're also trying to like, you're trying
That's
to,
great. Yeah, they're blue cat people. Okay.
yeah, but you're also trying to. They are emulating actual ethnic groups.
Yeah.
There's no way around it. So it's great, especially like for example, like Cliff Curtis, who you've seen in many movies, but you don't know you've seen in many movies. Or I
100%.
believe, and he's also I think didn't he was one of the original stars of like one of the Walking Dead TV shows.
Yeah. He's fantastic.
Yeah. So and he is Maori, I believe, and he is the chief. So it is good. It's really good to have representation, like that
Yeah,
in
he
this
was
movie,
on
and he's
Fear of the
fantastic in it.
Walking Dead. He's been in so
Uh,
much stuff. Like
yes.
again, John's right. It's a guy you know. You don't know his name, but you know him.
Mhm.
He's definitely been in. He was recently in for me recently in Doctor Sleep. He plays Billy,
Oh,
who takes Ewan McGregor's character under his wing when he gets there.
nice. But
Yeah, the
yeah.
kids are
I
good.
mean,
I was really worried about how it was going to play, and I think
mhm,
there's enough like natural kid energy in the way that the script is written that it doesn't feel like they're playing it for laughs. They're playing it to be. It is. It feels like kids teasing kids because they are different at the
yeah,
beginning, and then there's a bonding that eventually happens, and they get over it, and then they're all one team because by the end
yeah,
everybody has to be on the same team. And I think it's really
yeah,
well handled, and I think what's fun is watching Jake Sully again be sort of a fish out of water because he was the leader of a tribe and he can't just go slow, right? As a Marine, as a leader of a tribe, so he feels like he has to like ride the biggest creature in the water on day one. Him and his son both end up doing the same thing.
yeah,
They get on a creature and they both eat it within 30
yeah,
seconds.
yeah,
But he's a natural athlete and he's very coordinated in this body. So within, a day, he's flying on the back of these water creatures because he's
mhm,
also been flying on the back of a lot of creatures being a forest tribe. So
yeah,
like there's a
yeah,
natural ability for him to ride that is different than people maybe who had never done anything like this before. So he's a little fish out of water, but not the same way he was when he first ended up in his avatar body.
yeah. I think like if I had to kind of like pinpoint anything that like I didn't like, it's not even that I didn't like it. It's just like the movie's long. And it's not and I'm not trying to say, like, I'm not, like, trying to, like, bash the movie for being long, because honestly, I'm sure there was stuff that they took out, because I'm sure that this could be much longer.
Yeah.
Um, I only say that because when you go to see this movie, obviously see it in the theaters because it is an experience. You definitely need to see this movie in the theaters.
Yeah.
Just race your calendar that whole day. Because I did find myself because I did have something to go to, like, at 6 p.m. at night, but even the fact that, like, I saw a 10 a.m. showing, I was still getting a little bit of anxiety when, like, once in a while, I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm still in this movie.
Yep.
What time is it?" So I did
Yeah.
check my watch, like, twice. Um, but that being said, it's like, it's so well fleshed out, it's so beautiful, it's so, like, all encompassing that yeah, like, as long as I knew I didn't have to be anywhere, I could have totally spent another hour in this world,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think that's going to be a part of this, right? The only other note I will say that this movie you should go into it knowing is this feels like we are at the first movie of a future trilogy, right? So like there's a lot that gets thrown at you in the first act, and some of it isn't resolved, like we're talking about here, like
Mm,
Curie and things like there are aspects of this film that are not resolved. and that is because they are going to be resolved in the next movie or the one after that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so there's definitely some open threads when you get to it's a 3 hour and 7 minute movie, and there's still a bunch of open threads. So
Yeah.
just be
The
ready going in, that is
yeah.
what you're going to walk away with.
So I believe what I saw in an interview is, they filmed, they're done with this and the next one, and they're like halfway done with like the fourth one, but
Yeah,
depending on how well this movie does as far as like box office wise, that will dictate whether or not they reformat the
the
third
third
one to
film. Yeah.
be and it'll just be a trilogy and wah wah. Or if this does really well, then they will go forward with what they have
I think he's got
now.
scripts for 6, including the first film. So I think he has
Mm,
5 right now that he could be doing. So we're far enough in. I think one last thing I want to state is Zoe Saldana as Neytiri is one of the best motion capture actresses I've ever seen. After
mm,
rewatching Avatar and then seeing this film, her ability to bring emotion forward, to physically embody a mother, and every aspect of her character, from warrior to mother to lover to, is unbelievable. Her acting it shines through in this movie in ways that I don't know that I've even seen her do without being in Avatar. She's
mm,
so good in these 2 movies that I was a little disappointed that we didn't get more of her in this. I'm really hopeful that like the next movie is more her and less Jake, to be
mhm,
honest. But that being said, Sam Worthington was not my favorite part of Avatar, and he is way better in this movie. He has better story to tell. I think he's a more accomplished actor. I think he's much more comfortable in the character, and I think playing a father after all this time, he's got a really good handle on playing Jake Sully at this point. And I think he's so much better in this film than he even was in Avatar.
Yeah, when you think of this movie too versus the first one, um, Sam Sam Worthington didn't have to do double duty. Like he was just in performance capture mode. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So he embraced it. Whereas in the other one, he had to like bounce back between like being a human and being in or being an avatar driver in a sense. So
Yep.
um, yeah, he's great. She's great. Also, Stephen Lang in his motion capture as a he's great too.
He's
And
fantastic. Yeah.
um, and talking about like attention to detail, I think because the technology had jumped between the first Avatar and the second Avatar, it's
Hmm.
more noticeable in the second one than the first one. But all the human-made, genetically engineered avatars don't actually look like they look different than, like, Zoe Saldana. Zoe
Yeah.
Saldana has more cat-like features,
Yep.
whereas, like, Sam Worthington has more humanoid features, and I think that's really like, the minor details are there, and it's so cool and so great that they did that.
Yeah.
And then how cool is it to, like for artists to be like, "Well, what would a child of like a genetically engineered Navi and an actual biological Navi look like?" It's
Yeah.
very
Well, and I think that's interesting because I think all 3 of the kids of their kids look similar.
Mhm,
So, like the 3 naturally born children of these 2 parents look like they are siblings,
mhm.
whereas Kiri is definitely slightly different. Looks more
Yeah,
like
almost
the Avatar,
humanoid.
right? Like,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Okay, I think we should stop there. We wanted to talk a little bit about trailers, so if you would like to run away and you don't care about the trailers that we're going to talk about, you're more than welcome to. But next week, we're going to talk about Babylon. I'm so excited. I've been seeing that trailer for 6 months. I don't want to see that trailer anymore. I'm ready to see the film. So I can't wait to talk about it with John next week. But one thing I was going to say at the beginning was when I saw this film, I think I saw 7 trailers. And the opening trailer was Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and it
Oh,
was the
I
IMAX
didn't get
trailer.
it. Oh, jealous.
Bro, honestly, one of the craziest trailers because it doesn't really show any footage. It shows the opening stunt, which is him on the motorcycle, and they do
Yeah.
it on the first day of principal photography.
Wow.
They had to fly every piece of the track up to the top of the mountain because nothing can get there. So by helicopter, it took them 3 months to build the ramp, and in order to test this out, Tom Cruise dove out of a helicopter so he got acclimated to the area. So like he base jumps out of a helicopter just to get
Of course he
comfortable
did.
with the
Of course he did.
and then I mean you know he succeeds because he's Tom Cruise, but on the first take he goes down the ramp, but you watch him have to reckon with being human for a moment because you can see him have to say like I'm gonna ride onto a ramp that is going to throw my body at the earth. Like you see all of a sudden there's a moment where you see him have to like and he goes like and he like starts riding and I'm like just being in his mind because he's done so many crazy stunts. I can only imagine what it must feel like to look at a ramp and like I got a ramp and a parachute and
Yeah.
everything else is death, right? Like and he rides and what's amazing is they're shooting it from like 19 angles because they want to use
Mhm.
if it's good, right? But they have all this like drone footage that is not super high def of them like checking on him. So there's like one drone
I'm
that
sure
like
they'll use that.
it's unreal. But what's great is he gets to the end of the ramp and they had talked about it, and he like pushes the motorcycle away, but like leans forward like a skier so he can get past the motorcycle. So like he's using
Mhm.
the wind that's so he's pushed the motorcycle off and to the right slightly, and he leans forward like a skier, and then throws the parachute. But he gets to the bottom, and they're like canopies out. So like everybody's excited because Tom's not dead, basically because everybody's like the director's panic. You can see everybody's face like, please don't die, Tom Cruise. And he gets to the bottom and he's like, I think I could do it. I could hold it longer. And it's like it's good. Like knock it off. But you know that
Hey.
there's a motorcycle in a mountain somewhere in a heap that he just
Yeah.
threw off the top of a mountain. You know.
That's gonna be
What a
so
crazy trailer.
that's gonna be worth so much money on eBay if someone found that motorcycle.
Yeah, that was the opening trailer for me. And the last two trailers were both in 3D, and they were both Marvel 3D trailers. One was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and the second was Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
So yeah,
Honestly, Marvel, knock it off. Your 3D trailers are terrible. They're
okay.
not good. The trailers in
Yeah, that's
general are not the greatest trailers. They're okay.
right.
I think Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is a decent trailer. And I really
Right.
do think Guardians of the Galaxy is going to make us all cry. But like
Mm.
I've seen Quantumania a bunch of times. There's nothing added to that trailer by being in 3D.
Yeah, I was that's something that I saw too, and I was like, "Wait, do I need to see this in 3D?" And I was but it
Not according
confused
to that trailer.
me. Yeah. I wanted to really talk about the Oppenheimer trailer.
That trailer
Um,
looks insane, dude.
so yeah, so the new movie from, um, Mr.
Christopher
Christopher
Nolan.
Nolan,
Yep.
is called Oppenheimer, and it is about the creation of the atomic bomb. Everyone in this movie looks sad in a
Yeah.
way that, like, they have the weight of the world on their shoulder.
Yep.
I think this movie's gonna be so intense and, like, you know the ending,
Yeah.
you know, the
Well, and Cillian
the
Murphy plays Oppenheimer, and he's such a good actor anyway
Mhm.
that I'm really interested to see the movie because of him and Nolan, right? Like I'm on board. This is an auteur I'm going to follow forever, no matter how crazy he drives me. But
Mhm.
boy, it looks so dour and so weighty. I think you're really
Yeah.
right.
This movie when does this movie come out? Not for does this movie come out, like, next year?
It comes out in June of next year. Hold on, I'll tell you because I'm looking up a July 21st, 2023. So, do
Yeah,
you know
this
what
is
also comes out the same day?
no.
Barbie.
Whoa. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the Barbie trailer. I really liked that trailer.
Yes. And what's funny is Chris Evangelista, who is a person from Slash Film, he tweeted, I know what I'm doing for 5 hours on July
Oh, yeah.
21st,
I'm definitely
2023.
gonna see Barbie after Oppenheimer so I don't kill myself.
The Barbie trailer is adorable. It's this amazing homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, where all the little girls are playing with their dolls, and it's basically like the apes in the beginning of the film, not having any tools. And then all of a sudden there is a doll that is not just a baby, it is a full-fledged woman. And
I mean,
that
it's Margot
is
Robbie.
Margot Robbie as Barbie. It's so funny and so clever. I'm excited, so excited to see this film, but I'm more excited. I want to hear Noah Baumbach talk about writing this, because I can only imagine what he feels like seeing his name in Barbie letters in front of a film like Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach as the writers of Barbie, right? Like he writes such wacky films that I'm sure that he's getting such a kick out of the giant pink letters of his name in front of this film.
Yeah. Also, there's a nice homage to 2001: Space Odyssey and the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer too, because they all have different colored spacesuits, and I believe that's the homage to 2001. So that's pretty cool too.
Yep. Any other fun trailers?
I mean, not that I remember. Just like, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening over in the DC EU or whatever, or the lack of it, but we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see what ends up happening there. I think it's chaos and not in a good way.
Yeah, and if on social media,
65.
it's like
65. Did you see the trailer for 65?
Yeah, I'm very curious. I didn't get enough. I didn't get enough. A good enough look at the T-Rex, because I'm a big T-Rex guy. Like I need a good T-Rex. If I don't have a good T-Rex, I'll be mad. And it looked kind of feathery, which I'm like, all right, that's cool, because like that's supposedly they had feathers, and also supposedly, and this was probably after they made the movie, but I don't know if you knew this, but supposedly now they've realized that they've actually put the shoulder blades of the T-Rex skeletons on backwards, so they actually don't have little claw arms. They have little claw wings, apparently.
Oh.
In real life, supposedly. But you know what? I need my T-Rexes to look like thunder lizards. I need them to look
the last trailer we got to talk about is Spider-Man Across the Universe.
Right.
Across the Spider-Verse. I'm blown away. I was like in tears in the first 15 to 17 seconds when it's Miles's mom talking about the fact that like I've always had to take care of my little boy, and I'm always worried when you're not here that nobody's taking care of my little boy. And to see you becoming a man, you got to take care of that little boy for me. I was like, why are we doing this? Like, this is supposed to be a fun movie. But yeah, I was so excited to see the actual Spider-Verse. Like when you land in this cross world where everybody connects, there's like 500 Spider-Men in the shot. Like I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. So
yeah, and they're animating both of them at the same time, this one and the sequel. So we should get this one, and hopefully a year later, I think we're gonna get the next one.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
I'm excited. June 2nd, 2023. Can't get here fast enough.
Nice. Well, I think that wraps it up for trailers. It's always fun to kind of like, just like kind of ease out of the review and talk about what some things to come. So
I'm excited. I can't wait to see Babylon this week. I think we're trying to figure out, we may do a year-end review of all the things that we were excited about this year as our January 1st episode. So we'll keep working on that and figure it out for you all. Please rate, review wherever you're listening to us. Go to geekonfilm.com, find all our social media, and really clap back. We'd love to hear from you about these podcasts. Hit us up on Twitter at geekonfilm.com or on Mastodon or on Instagram. We would love for you to be a part of the community.
Absolutely. Yeah. It would be great to hear from folks. Feedback always helps too. So if you got some feedback, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, as much feedback as you have, 5 stars really means we pay attention. But absolutely, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, it's like tipping on OnlyFans. If you tip us with a 5-star review, we'll listen to you.
And we're going to end on the OnlyFans comment, and we'll say happy holidays. Thank you so much for being a part of all of this. This has been a Geek on Film podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.